Hello and welcome back to Modern World History. In this video, we're going to talk about the end of the Cold War. And we kind of started talking last time about how I mentioned that Khrushchev had to go and take care of some things internally that were going wrong with the Soviet Union at the time that the Soviets withdrew from Afghanistan. Well, um, the last leader of the Soviet Union is going to be this guy named Gorbachev, a young, enthusiastic reformer. Here's the guy right here. Okay, and by young, he was apparently 54, which in terms of leading the country, that is perhaps pretty young. But Gorbachev was faced with trying to deal with stagnation, economic and political stagnation in the Soviet Union. They weren't growing; they were stagnant, and it looked like things were kind of falling apart. And so he adopts this policy of glasnost or openness. And Glasnost really did bring about a huge amount of fundamental change in the Soviet Union. So it was centered on exchange of new ideas. It opened up churches. It allowed for previously banned books to be read, I guess. It also released political opponents. And so there's just a lot of huge change that the Soviet Union had always just kept closed off that they began to bring back. That, you know, uh, it was different. It was not consistent with the Soviet Union, and it sparked an opportunity for revolution. And also kind of going hand in hand with glasnost is this idea of perestroika, which is economic restructuring. So the communists, obviously, the state is going to control all the factories and the economic system and everything. But what they need to do is they needed to allow a little bit of change in order to stimulate some degree of growth. And so Gorbachev did not want to do away with communism, but he ends up in his effort to fix some of the USSR's social and economic stagnation issues. He kind of brought in some capitalistic, I guess, he kind of restructured the economy to look a little bit capitalistic, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So this also, he also reduced spending on military, and so the United States and the Soviet Union, signed the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, the INF Treaty, and this kind of resulted in both sides spending less on weapons and kind of getting rid of some of the weapons. And so the Soviet Union is consisted of these different republics, and the Soviet republics, as you can see right here in this map, they began to rebel against the Soviet Union because they saw this as an opportunity to maybe get their freedom back from the Soviet Union. So one thing that we got to keep in mind right now is that there's over 100 different ethnic groups, all right, ethnic groups in these places here. I mean, Russia even today is a very much a multinational country, of many different nationalities living and represented within Russia. So the Russians are only going to be the majority nationality, okay? But there are other groups like the Estonians, the Latvians, the Lithuanians, Ukrainians. You see that right now in the news. Right now, yesterday I watched a PBS NewsHour episode. We were talking about this American that goes in and fights against fights for the Ukrainians against these Russians who are trying to take over the eastern side. And in 2014, they took over Crimea because of the Russian majority there. So these things are really, really still in the news today. But the reason why I say all this is because I want you to know that this whole region is extremely ethnically diverse. And so they saw these movements as an opportunity for, like we said up here, for revolution. Okay? An opportunity for revolution. And so Lithuania was the first to rebel, and this further reduced Gorbachev's popularity because Gorbachev decided he's going to put it down very fast and forcefully because even though he doesn't really want to, he feels pretty concerned that by not doing something about it quick and with an iron fist, it's going to result in more revolution from other territories as well. And so, as a quick little aside, I wanted to point out to you guys that these different territories, these different republics within the Soviet Union, they did hold some elections, some democratic elections, as part of these restructurings, and Boris Yeltsin was elected the president of what is in the red. So, in other words, Boris Yeltsin would have been the president of Russia. Okay, and he was also kind of reform oriented, even more liberal than Gorbachev. All right, and so super hardliner communists, in other words, your conservatives that already had the power under the conservative under the Soviet system, they didn't want to lose power. And the only thing that can happen to all these reforms is that they can ultimately lose power. And so they wanted both Gorbachev and Yeltsin out of the picture. And so they went and arrested Gorbachev out of his vacation beach home or whatever it was, or his vacation home, and they ended up sending the military to Moscow to launch to overthrow Yeltsin, and they were going to kind of reel everything back in. But the thing is, after being there for a few days, that the military didn't do anything, and the people boycotted, and they protested the military's presence there, and they had pretty much lost their fear of the Soviet government. And the hardliners, told the military to attack, and they didn't do anything. They didn't, and so it was a failed coup. And Yeltsin goes up there and declares that that now we're going to continue our regular day to day, and the Soviet Union basically just disintegrated after that. And so that was really the end of the Soviet Union. It's done after this. The various republics that you see up here in this map, they declared independence, and things kind of led to what they are today. Russia did decline greatly under Yeltsin, but in the year 2000, which really wasn't all that far ago, a new guy wins the election to the presidency, and that guy is Mr. Vladimir Putin. And he is still the president of Russia today, and still a huge influence in the region and in a lot of areas within that area, that region, the Middle East, Eastern Europe. He's in the news. So if you want to know more about Vladimir Putin, I encourage you to watch any amount of news a week, and I'm sure that you will see his name and his image, as he is still very much in the forefront of global politics today. Thanks for watching.